Based on the great new book Uncovering Mindfulness, In Search of a Life More Meaningful, we bring you a new series of podcasts called From Mindfulness with Love by Paul Mudd, the author. Here's today's podcast. We hope you enjoy.
Are you in search of a life more meaningful? Welcome to the podcast that takes you from mindful to mindful. Leadership, resilience, compassion, success. Join the journey. From Mindfulness with Love, here's your host, Paul Mudd.
And so we come to the end of our journey uncovering mindfulness. Or do we? This is the last podcast in the current series From Mindfulness with Love, but it is not the end of our search. It's not even the end of the beginning of our quest. As I wrote in the book, Uncovering Mindfulness in Search of a Life More Meaningful, I don't know whether I went looking for mindfulness or whether it just found me. Was it a chance happening, a random series of events that came together to alight and lead me to the right place at the right time? In the book, I also go further, though, and say that I don't think that mindfulness is something actually to be discovered. Rather, it is there in each and every one of us to be uncovered, to be given space and time, freedom and opportunity to be nurtured, to be grown, to be developed. In the book, I also put forward a simple 5-step plan to help bring forward a mindful revolution, and we touched on these steps in episode 4 in this series. If you've missed this first time round, go back and have a listen after this podcast, but I will go through those 5 steps once more before we sign off on the series today. The question I want to ask and talk about, though, is one I have really rather thought a lot about since Uncovering Mindfulness was published towards the end of 2014. And that is, did I write the book I set out to write? I was commissioned by a Danish publishing company in April 2014, and with a very rough and sparse outline of the chapters and the things I might cover, I began to research and think and write and think and research. And looking back to where I started from, I certainly did seem to end up writing a rather different book. The biggest difference was that it quickly became a personal journey, a sort of quest. And this came about from a process I engaged in that the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle would have recognized and called phronesis. That is, a dialectical approach to uncovering a practical wisdom and a sense of one's self in the world. The full title of the published book is, as you know, Uncovering Mindfulness in Search of a Life More Meaningful. But its working title was always From Hegel to Van Morrison, and if you get the opportunity to read it, you'll see why. I think, however, to that working title, we could have added the equally illustrious name of Bob Dylan too. But why? Well, in the 1960s, people were searching for where it's at, and in the mid-60s, Dylan had a song that captured this mood bang on. That song was Like a Rolling Stone, and it talked about a horse and a diplomat, amongst other things. But we soon found out, through the course of the song's narrative, that they were very definitely not where it was at. And in turn, the narrative arc of my book became a personal journey, my quest to find out where it's at. But unlike a rolling stone, and without a horse or a diplomat in sight, I think I did, and not in a mystical or cosmic sense, but very much in the right here, right now sense. So, on the one hand, I was on the quest searching for this thing called mindfulness, like Johnny Cash and his thing called love. And then my Gestalt moment. The penny dropped and I realised that where it's at is right here, right now. It isn't something to be searched for or found. It's simply to be uncovered. Mindfulness is something within and accessible to us all. It's in everyone's reach, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Before writing my book, I was St. Paul's Catter, very much in search of their strophe. I was Henry Ford's crazed person, rushing here and there with nervous hands and worried minds. I was on a veritable world tour and taking part in the Cup Winners' Cup of mindfulness or mindlessness. What I also began to realise, though, was that mindfulness can't be neatly labelled or put in a box. It's not some gimmicky self-help tool or new age fad, neither is it a management tool or simply just another initiative. And it's certainly not a general panacea for everything that's wrong or not right, although it's been called out for many things. But no, actually it's much bigger than all of that. It embraces history, philosophy, neuroscience, quantum field theory, singularity, proto-linguistics, complexity theory, adaptive capacity, organizational change, leadership, coaching, performance and productivity in the workplace, creativity and innovation, compassion, resilience, emotional intelligence, gratitude, happiness, education, social justice, healthcare, and universal consciousness, to name just a few things. And my book covers all of this and more. But to paraphrase E.F. Schumacher, any intelligent fool can make things more complex. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. Well, I don't know about the genius part, and instead of courage, maybe stamina in the Chekhovian sense is a better word to use. But I couldn't write a book on mindfulness without writing about all these things. Yet, I'll tell you what, my book is far from complex. What would have been the point in writing a complex book about something so profound, yet so simple? I wanted to write a book about something that I have come to think is really rather important. But I wanted it to be a book that could be picked up, read, understood, and relates to anyone. I want everyone to be able to uncover their mindfulness and recognize that it's not something unattainable or unreachable. It's not too tough, and neither is it trite or shallow or faddish. And you certainly don't have to go on mindful retreats and experience full immersion, as some courses being advertised on the internet would like you to do, and spend quite a considerable chunk of your hard-earned money for the pleasure. You don't have to spend anything other than a small amount of your time each day to start to get the real benefits. And if you take nothing else from this, please remember that. The book, Uncovering Mindfulness, is intended to be, if nothing else, the simple way in, a one-stop shop for understanding and for practice, the little big book of mindfulness. And since being written and published, mindfulness has become a rather hot topic. It's a global trend for 2015. Leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos in February 2015, the hub of choice for the planet's plutocrats, started their daily sessions with mindfulness practice, and a live debate on mindful leadership was packed to the rafters. Both US President Obama and the UK's PM David Cameron have mentioned mindfulness in speeches in 2015, and Wired, Silicon Valley's tech Bible, has called it the new caffeine. I like to say it's like having your brightness switch turned on. But whether it's in business and the boardroom, education or in healthcare, whether it's for mental fitness to building resilience, combating stress, improving relationships, giving yourself grace under fire, or becoming the authentic you, my book talks about all this too. It somehow anticipated and turned the brightness switch up on all this and caught the zeitgeist. And each of the podcasts in the accompanying series from Mindfulness with Love dives down to an even greater depth on things like mindful living, mindful leadership, mindful business, mindful education, the brain and mindfulness, mindfulness and coaching, and the compassionate you. I write in Chapter 7 the book that I'm rather attracted to the notion of hope that the practice of mindfulness introduces into the human equation. It can have a profoundly positive effect. I believe it can help us apply the brakes, and it is in each and every one of us to be uncovered. Pablo Picasso said, "An amateur borrows, a genius steals." So let's all be geniuses. Apply the brakes across the world and steal back our future with that 5-point plan to make wellness, well-being and well-doing the driving force for everyone right here, right now. And how do we do this? Well, firstly, changing the story, one conversation, one innovation, one leap of faith at a time. Secondly, giving common humanity, compassion and collaboration real weight and value. Third, recognizing and making mindfulness a key part of maintaining wellness and promoting well-being and well-doing. Fourth, ensuring that day-to-day happiness is at the heart of every policy, decision, and fifth, proactively uncovering our mindfulness and living it without words, just allowing it to be part of who we are. And that, my friends, is the kicker. So, did I write the book I intended? No, I think I wrote a rather better book. But you see whether you agree by getting yourself a copy, if you haven't already done so, from Amazon online. You can follow the continuing journey on Twitter at The Mindful Book, and that's capital T, capital M, capital B, where there is also a link to the book. And you can listen to the rest of the podcasts in this series on iTunes or via my website, which is www.themudpartnership.co.uk, and that's all lowercase and mud with, of course, 2 Ds. Let us know what you think and be mindful. Hell yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and leave a review. We want your feedback. Help us support your journey uncovering mindfulness in search of a life more meaningful. From Mindfulness with Love, we'll catch you next time.